everybody, and welcome to the Aggieville Alleycats podcast. Where come rain, shine, or anything in between, we're here to deliver to you the Kansas State sporting news that you so love. I'm Ace Edwards, and it's just me this week. Connor's attending to some personal matters, so I'm just going to be doing the weekly recap this week, and it's going to be a relatively short weekly recap, just the women's. We'll do more of a complete season breakdown of them whenever Connor's around, but more just their Sweet 16 game, and then, of course, the Batcats being on quite the hot streak. So let's just go ahead and dive straight into the Sweet 16 matchup for Kansas State, the women's team. And I will be the first to admit that I didn't have a whole lot in the way of expectations going into this game, and I got a little bit more hope whenever Juju Watkins went down, but I will say that I was very happy with how K-State performed in this game, and I think despite it being a loss, I do think it was a great send-off for a few players in particular. You know, players like Serena Sundell playing 40 minutes, getting 22 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists, and no turnovers. It was a good send-off for Yoki, who it was just announced that she's actually just retiring from basketball, which, yeah, could have seen that coming, mostly because my knees hurt just seeing her walk, much less run on a basketball court. So I think she's more than in her right mind to begin her career as a family counselor, which she will make more money in than in the WNBA anyway. So it was a good send-off for her as well. She, of course, got the Ioka Lee tradition of getting a double-double in points and rebounds, but she was still getting hacked pretty much the entire game, and we'll talk about the referees in a moment, talking about the holistic nature of the game. Jalen Glenn also played 40 minutes, got 10 points, 2 of 4 from 3. Zy Walker had a really good game towards the back end of this one. She had some really big shots towards the back end of the game, ended up getting 9 points, 8 rebounds. And the only one that I would say probably didn't have a good send-off to her career in this game, which, you know, of course, everyone would rather end off on a win, but Tamira Poindexter only going 2 of 9 from the field, 2 of 8 from 3, and a couple of those shots were they looked like a lot of desperation shots, honestly, where she wasn't getting her feet set. She was just kind of throwing something up. But that's the only person that I could say didn't have a great game as their sort of send-off. But I feel like the big takeaway from this game was, and this is a conversation that I've had with a lot of people, the refereeing in women's college basketball genuinely detracts from so many games, and people complain about men's basketball refereeing, and it's on a completely different level in the women's game. So Yoki is getting hacked the entire game. I mean, she's getting just absolutely shot like it's a South Central drive-by and not getting a whistle, and yet she ends up with 4 fouls, and a lot of those were, 2 of them were legit, but 2 of them were very, very questionable, including the last foul of the game, which ended up giving USC more free throws and possession. That I think they called it was either I think it was a lane violation. I don't remember specifically what they called it, but yeah, just giving the ball back to USC basically killed any chance that K-State had. And I think that K-State hits that shot to end the game, to end up tying it or going to overtime? Probably not. But it's the fact that they were robbed of the opportunity just because of a really, really small foul call. That's just not how you want to end the season. That's not how you want to end a game. It'd be one thing if I thought it was the right call. I don't. There's not a single part of me that thinks that foul should have been called on Ioka Lee. And they just weren't, the referees weren't good the entire game, and that's probably my biggest complaint with women's college basketball just in general, is the refereeing is so consistently bad throughout every single game, even in the tournament games on the biggest stages. This was a nationally broadcast main network game in prime time, and yeah, USC was the more talented team on paper, but I still am really happy with how K-State was able to hang around in this game. And Jeff Mittie was able to get to the second weekend for the first time in his career, which kept me from being waterboarded by Scott Wildcat. So I'll walk away happy with that. But the other pieces of news for the women's basketball team, again, whenever Connor's back, we'll do a more holistic season recap. But there's been one portal entry for the women so far, and that is Eliza Maupin, who, if you've listened to this show, you know that's been one of Connor and I's favorite players for a very long time. She just couldn't find her way onto the floor, which is a real shame to me because she was so much faster and so much more athletic than everyone else. I guess it just never translated to the floor, but obviously you wish the best for Eliza Maupin in the portal wherever she ends up. But to give a sort of short synopsis of how I feel about the season, I'm satisfied with how the season went, especially given you end up getting knocked out by a 1 seed who's going to end up being the story of the tournament because of Juju Watkins getting hurt and them still rallying to win games. So, this is definitely a K-State program that I feel has the trajectory pointing up, especially with getting a flip of a really, I think a top 75 recruit to flip from Auburn to add on to the ridiculously highly rated freshman recruiting class for this upcoming season. So while you are not retiring, but saying goodbye to two inarguable greatest of all time players for K-State and Serena Sundell and Ayoka Lee, you're getting a lot more girls and women to step up into their place who have potential to be on that same tier, if not better. I mean, Jordan Spicer ends up winning a 3-point contest in the McDonald's All-American game, so she's going to be exciting. There's I always forget the girl from Spain, but she actually has played very, very well, and then Anaya Foy and the flip from Auburn. So the trajectory of the program is definitely pointing upwards, and it's a very, very exciting time to be a women's basketball fan, especially after just the roller coaster of emotions, especially on Twitter, about whether or not Jeff Mittie would be returning. But that's pretty much all I have to say on the women's basketball season. Now we can talk about the Batcats. And, I mean, what can you say about the Batcats other than they've been a really, really hot team as of late? Winners of 5 straight, including a series sweep up against Texas Tech this last weekend. Ended up beating Tech 10-5, 6-3, and 5-4. The 5-4 was actually a walk-off by Shintaro Inoue. But we'll just start from the very beginning with the 10-5 game. And this is a game that I think just sort of set in a pattern. There's been a pattern, especially with Jake Frost's starts, where he will go 4 innings and he will be a really, really good pitcher for those 4 innings. And then as soon as he gets to inning number 5, he just loses his command. And even this game, he had a solid start, but still just getting to that 5th inning was what really started hampering him. 5 hits, 4 runs, only 2 of them earned, 1 walk and a strikeout and a hit by pitch on 62 pitches. Then Adam Arthur coming in next, only 1 hit, 1 walk in 1 1/3 innings. Miles Smith, 1 hit, 3 strikeouts, and 1 2/3 innings. Miles Smith has been a pretty pleasant surprise outside of even then he was the bright spot against the Wichita State game, but that's later. And then Blake Dean going 2 innings, only 1 hit, 1 earned run, 3 strikeouts, and a hit by pitch in 32 pitches. So pitching had a good day, other than, the only blights are the 5th inning, really, where they gave up 3 runs, and that was on a 3-run home run, in which one of the runs was unearned. So you'll find yourself, that's a good enough pitching performance to win, but it really was the back of the offense today that made everything go. And you had home runs by Max Martin, who the season record for K-State home runs in a season by an individual player is 16 by Dylan Phillips. He's at 11, and there are 28 games left. Either 27 or 28 games left. So, barring an absolute catastrophe, he's on pace to destroy that record. He honestly is playing himself into a Golden Spikes conversation, which, wow, that would pretty well put him in probably best player in K-State history, even though he's a one and done. If he finds himself even on the honorable mentions list for a Golden Spikes Award, which for the uninitiated is the best player in college baseball, that's automatic legend status, especially at a value position like shortstop. But the other home runs were KOC, Keegan O'Connor, and then Seth Dardar. But you also had D. Kennedy going 3 for 5, Shintaro Inoue going 2 for 4, 3 for 4 for Max Martin with 3 RBI and a walk. So again, just tearing the cover off the ball. AJ Vasco scored himself twice, went 1 for 4 in an RBI. KOC had a 3-run homer, Seth Dardar 2 for 5 with 3 RBI. And that was it for the offensive production. But again, that's all you really need when you're putting up 10 runs. So the top of the lineup for K-State has been especially potent. Like getting led by D. Kennedy, Max Martin, who fluctuates anywhere from the 3 to 5, so the prime positions, you'd say, and KOC have made for a really, really deadly middle of the lineup that you don't really have a good option for. And AJ Vasco is still, his exit velos have been ridiculous as of late. He just needs to get his launch angle up, and if he gets his launch angle up, that's a dangerous game, because he will already hit some 95 plus mile per hour exit velo balls. And yeah, so he just needs to get his angle up a little bit. But that leads us to the second game, which was a 6-3 Wildcat victory, which majority of K-State's runs came in the third inning with a 4 spot. And we'll start with pitching again, because it was really just 2 people this time. It was Michael Cavedo going 4 1/3, 3 earned on 5 hits, 6 strikeouts, a walk, and a hit by pitch. And then James Guyette, the Iron Man himself, 4 2/3, closed out the game. Actually gets credited with the win because of how baseball stats are. If you're the starter, you have to go 5 to get credited with a winner. You can still get credited with a loss, but you need to go 5 to get a win, which, yeah, that's great baseball scoring system. But James Guyette threw 4 2/3 innings of 1 hit ball with only 1 walk and 4 strikeouts and a hit by pitch. So James Guyette, the thing with him is, I think that he has legitimately awesome stuff. I think that he's just sort of trying to figure out how to use it. I think he's trying to figure out sequencing a little bit. But this is one of those starts where he just had it, because his thing right now is sequencing and control. His sinking fastball is probably one of the most disgusting pitches that I've seen at K-State. I don't say this lightly, it is up there with the Tyson Neighbors slider and the Jordan Wicks changeup. And even the Eric Torres changeup, I feel like, is probably one of the most underrated pitches in K-State history. But James Guyette's sinker, or his fadeaway fastball, is genuinely gross in the best possible way for K-State. So the moment that he sort of learns to locate that a lot more down in the zone instead of having it elevated, I mean, he's already getting a lot of whiffs on that pitch when it's elevated. So James Guyette's a very exciting pitcher because of not only his mix, because he does have a lot of pitches. He has the sinking fastball, he has a straight four-seamer, he has a changeup, I believe he has a curveball and a slider as well. So he has a legitimate 5-pitch mix, maybe even 6. But he just needs to sort of work on the sequencing for it. But even without that, he's still a really, really good pitcher. But in terms of offense on the day, the 2 home runs were D. Kennedy and AJ Vasco, contributing both of those. D. Kennedy's home run was his only hit on the day, but he did have a walk. Shintaro Inoue goes 1 for 4. AJ Vasco 2 for 3, 2 runs, 2 RBI, and a walk. Max Martin gets a rare 0 for 3 day, but still generated a walk. And then Seth Dardar ends up getting credited with an RBI on a sac fly. And then KOC 2 for 4 with 2 RBI. And that's it. But again, that's all you need when you have such a great pitching performance by both of the guys. And it is worth noting that Texas Tech has really struggled this year. It's been a really topsy-turvy year for the Big 12 because Texas Tech, TCU, and Oklahoma State are the perennial powers of Big 12 baseball, and all of them are kind of having a down season. And, that's just left the door open for K-State to sort of step in as sort of big dogs in the conference. But we'll talk about that after this conference series, because the last one was a 5-4 K-State victory in which K-State came back in the final inning, score 3 runs, and end up walking Texas Tech off in a heartbreaking fashion. And that's been a weirdly consistent part of K-State, is breaking the other team's heart but avoiding getting your own broken. And that's just one of those kind of break the spirit losses. But we also can go over the pitchers first. Lincoln Sheffield, 2 2/3 innings, 5 hits, 3 earned, 2 walks, 2 strikeouts. Not his best day. But Ty Rule came in, picked him up, 3 1/3 innings, 3 strikeouts, 1 hit by pitch in 53 pitches. And then Taz Butler, 2 hits, 1 earned on 2 walks. Dante Lewis gets a walk and a wild pitch and a hit by pitch, so not a good outing there. But then JJ Slack, we haven't seen much of him lately, but he really just showed out in this outing, going a full 2 innings, 5 Ks, only 1 walk on 35 pitches. He ends up getting credited with the win, but he had a really, really good performance towards the back end. But the hero of the game is Shintaro Inoue, who his 1 hit, he only had 1 on the day, but did get 2 walks and 2 RBI, ended up being the walk-off hit. And there was 1 home run. It was KOC, who I think Maximus Martin has sort of just overshadowed Keegan O'Connor, but Keegan O'Connor has quietly been one of the best players in the Big 12 as well. So a lot of high-impact transfers for K-State, just sort of working their way through everything. But outside of KOC and Shintaro, you don't have a whole lot in the way of offensive production. KOC goes 2 for 3. Bear Madliak 1 for 3 with a walk. Kyan Lotus 1 for 3. And yeah, so this is one of those games where you just do enough to win. And K-State with this is actually in sole possession of first place in the Big 12 standings. And we'll talk about their national standings afterwards, but to be in first place in the Big 12, which also includes Arizona is a damn good team this year as well. Just having that top position is really, really impressive, especially from a team that Connor and I at the very beginning were expecting a lot of inconsistency from, just because it was a lot of guys playing together for the first time. It's a lot of young guys. But a lot of the young guys have actually been the most consistent players on the team. Avasco has been a really consistent high exit velo, high upside guy. And Dante Lewis is, if nothing else, very exciting as a player. But I think the main story is just how well the transfers have played, especially Max Martin and Keegan O'Connor. And Bear Madliak not being too much of a step down from Rafael Pelletier's defense at the catching position. He's not Rafi. Rafael Pelletier is probably he's going to be a guy that makes it into the MLB on the back of his defense alone, and occasional just absolute missiles being hit by him. But Bear Madliak is probably a better overall player at catcher. So it's sort of having all of those premier positions, your shortstop, your catchers, those pitchers. Center field has been mostly Dante Lewis mixed with Kyan Lotus, but having all of those positions come together has made for a really exciting team that has been sort of, up to this point, has been able to ward off any of the inconsistencies that normally come with being such a young team. And I think that's why it's so exciting, because you get the exciting play and you get to see a lot of these guys develop in real time. but you're also not seeing a whole lot of the truly abysmal that you get when you have a lot of guys developing all together at once. Though, I will say, it did sort of show its head towards the back end of the K-State-Wichita State game. The Wichita State, they're not a good team this year. Going into this, they were 10-17. I don't think they beat anyone with a pulse. And K-State jumped on them really early. They ended up getting a 7-run lead in the 5th inning. Ends up tacking 4 more on. It ends up being 12-1 in the 7th inning. And you end up saying, this game's probably over. There's no need to stress. And then Wichita State proceeds to rattle off 8 unanswered runs and gets 1 more to make it way more stressful in the 9th inning. And most of that was off the back of some really costly errors and also just some, to put it frankly, some bad pitching, I think is the most unfortunate way to put it. And since we've begun with pitching pretty much this entire time, we'll keep the theme going. The starter actually had a very good day for K-State, which is Tanner Duke. Goes 4 innings, only 1 earned run, 3 walks, 4 strikeouts, and 1 hit by pitch. The only complaint is the walks, but that's just going to happen when you have a guy like him who has that hammer curve and he wants to keep going to it. So you'll take your 4 innings from your midweek starter. You'll take that. Then Adam Arthur goes 2 innings, only 2 hits and a strikeout and a hit by pitch. So, yeah, you're feeling pretty good. And then the back end of the game, it really fell apart for K-State. Blake Dean gives up 3 hits, 3 runs, only 1 of them earned, granted, and a hit by pitch and only 21 pitches. Not great. Didn't have his best stuff. And Miles Smith only goes 1/3 of an inning, gives up 4 hits of his own, 2 walks, and a strikeout for 26 pitches. And we end up having to call on James Guyette for the last 2 innings, who gives up 4 hits, 1 earned, 2 runs, a walk, 2 strikeouts on 47 pitches. In a perfect world, I think James Guyette's probably the closer. I think that's not necessarily fully set in stone, but I think that he is closer 1 if we're looking at this like a depth chart situation. And having to bring him into a game where you had a 12-1 lead at one point in a midweek is really, really bad. There's no way around it. The back end pitching performance of this game was bad. And I can't even say that it was bad in one way, because it was a pitch-by-pitch thing, which granted most defense and pitching is a more pitch-by-pitch thing. Everything can go wrong at once. But one inning it'd be walks and lack of control. Another inning would just be getting a lot of cheap hits due to overshifting, which granted the shift works for Pete Hughes more often than it doesn't, so I don't complain about it too hard. But I would be lying to you if I don't get frustrated. I'd be lying to you if I said I didn't get frustrated seeing a lot of those base hits go whenever we would have normally just had a guy in the area if not for the shift. But the pitching in this game was just not very good. Outside of Tanner Duke and Adam Arthur, who goes the first 6 innings, it was just those last 3 innings that were so unbelievably brutal for K-State. But there were also a few. The bright spot obviously was offensively, where Wichita State tried to do what every team has done to K-State in the midweek, and that's just throw every arm that they have at them to see if they can mess up their timing, which, granted, it was working for a little bit. But there were still a few really, really good performances. D. Kennedy ends up getting 2 home runs. Max Martin hits one across the street. If you look at the broadcast, seriously, go look at K-State Baseball's Twitter. I can't find the ball. I can see it for like a half second as soon as they zoom out. But as soon as it crosses over the fence, it disappears. It may have genuinely gone to space. I don't know. It's gone. That was just an absolute missile. But outside of that, Shintaro Inoue goes 1 for 4 with a run, 2 walks. D. Kennedy, 2 for 5, 2 runs, 5 RBI. AJ Avasco goes 1 for 5. KOC, 2 for 4 with a walk. And then you get really quiet until you go down to Max Martin, who ends up going 3 for 4 with that absolute missile he hit. And then Dante Lewis has a really good offensive day, 2 for 3 with 3 runs and an RBI with 2 walks. And Dante Lewis is definitely not someone that you wish to walk because his speed is just so unbelievable. So outside of the pitching, which, don't get me wrong, really bad, really, really bad pitching for K-State. This is one of those games where you're just really, really happy that you escaped from, especially if it's a midweek, especially against an in-state team. And all of a sudden, you look at K-State's RPI, and they're ranked 15 in the country, which would actually put them pretty comfortably in the we're hosting a regional. And there are a few projections that have K-State, I believe, as a number 9 overall seed, which is just outside of hosting a super regional. So this is one of the best teams in the country if you look at RPI, because now RPI is actually starting to mean something. And it's just such an exciting team as well. And what gives me so much hope with this team is they're so young too. Like they're a young team who just keeps rocking it. And so if you're not tuned into the Batcats, first off, you're not. If you're not tuned into the Batcats and you're listening to this show, I feel like that I don't think that that's a Venn diagram that exists. I feel like if you listen to the show, you are a Batcats fan, so you know just how exciting this team is. And they have one more, well, by the time that this episode comes out, they have a conference series up against Oklahoma State in Stillwater. Stillwater will always be a house of horrors, even though Oklahoma State has been generously up and down this year, and then going up against a tournament team on Tuesday in Missouri State. So really, really important series coming up for K-State, not only for RPI, but to sort of keep their stranglehold on the top spot in the Big 12. And we know that this team has historically had troubles playing on the road, especially in Stillwater. If they walk away one of 3 or 2, if they end up winning this series, they already have a lot of eyebrows raised, but that I feel like is going to get even more national eyebrows raised, which they're ranked, so they are already raising a lot of excitement throughout the country and in Manhattan. So go out and support the Batcats. They're a really, really fun team this year. But that pretty much wraps up this episode of the Aggieville Alleycats podcast. Thank you all so much for listening. If you want to follow or contact the show, you can follow us just about anywhere at Aggieville Alleycats. And if you want to email us, we're aggievillealleycats@gmail.com. If you want to follow us on a more personal note, I am at ACEdwards00, and my lovely co-host Connor, who hopefully will be back next week, is at Connor Balthazar. And if you want to support the show financially, please be sure to check out the official Aggieville Alleycats merch store, link found in our podcast and Twitter bios. But most importantly, thank you all for listening to this episode of the Aggieville Alleycats podcast. Where come rain, shine, or anything in between, we're here to deliver to you the Kansas State sporting news that you so love. Stay safe, Alleycats.